Guys, Ryan Biddulph here, blogging from paradise. Wanted to do a little change up here. Maybe once in a while I'll start talking about some of my wilder travel stories. I guess they don't have to be wild, but I want to revisit perhaps my most intense travel story from my globe-trotting days. Back in 2013, Kelly and I visited India. It was an enchanting journey, a really interesting trip where we spent about 2.5 months in southern India. Now, fortunately, we got to experience some of the best India has to offer, some great food, really kind people. But when we were staying in Bangalore, ironically enough, when I enjoyed a meal, and I think it was a meal from a very say snazzy restaurant, but compared to a lot of the different eateries in India, it was definitely on the higher end. So long and the short of it, I arrived back to the hotel room 5-6 hours after consuming a meal, and my stomach started to feel a little distended. I want to say it was deli belly, if you will, and it's that real crappy feeling, not necessarily nauseous, but just really distended, like an alien growing down there. So kind of unpleasant. As this pressure builds up, I feel like I'm a bit backed up, which is a really nasty combo, and I want to keep things as delicate as possible for you, keep it PG rated. So let's just say things weren't moving, and my stomach kept, well, let's say being a little more distended. So it was almost like a, not quite brick level yet, but really distended stomach, very hard, so much gas buildup, and I was just constipated. I couldn't go. So this started about halfway through our trip in Bangalore, and it was day after day, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and as the days started to pile up, I'm thinking, okay, now this is not passing. This is not a simple case of Delhi belly, or Bali belly in another part of the world. So I feel it building, and then I start getting the tiniest little, guys, I'm trying to be as diplomatical as possible here, but just the tiniest squirts. Let's just say that. So it's really vile, nasty combo. Not quite fully vile yet, but just starting. So I'm feeling that, and sure enough, we have to take a trip to lovely Aleppo, or I should say Muhammad, technically, is the town. So I'm feeling really out of it, staying in bed most of the time. I decide to do the trip. Initially I'm thinking, oh, can we stay another day? And I'm like, no, let's not miss it. Really nice place. So I just remember getting inside the tuk-tuk, rushing over to the bus, which we were late for, and just feeling really off and really bad. I've been staying in bed. Bad deal, but whatever. So we get to the bus. I pass it on the bus and actually sleep pretty well. But we arrive at Cochin, aka Kochi, at about 6 in the morning, bright and early. And as soon as we get there, I started feeling really off. And then as we're waiting for our bus, instantly, I'm talking like a split second, a most powerful wave of nausea runs over my body, and I break out in heavy sweats, start pouring off my face. It wasn't even that hot and humid out, but it was just that wave of holy smoke, something is very wrong here. So I sit down. I thought I was going to puke all over the place. I really fought with all my heart and soul, my being, to hold it in, not to puke in front of all these Indian ladies and Indian men who are just kind of staring at me thinking, why is this white dude totally breaking out in sweats in the middle of nowhere? So I kind of jog over to the bathroom, and I release a little bit, just a little bit of backdoor stuff, not the most solid situation, and we'll leave it at that. And I belch. So I'm like, oh, great, gas release. So I'm just like, you know what, we're on the up and up. Not quite. But I figured just that temporary relief was going to put me in the right direction, a little bit of gas. No. We hop on this other bus heading to Muhammad, and I'm just feeling a little bit better, but not quite there yet, just not feeling great. So we get to Muhammad, and I'm telling you guys, we're talking like 7-8 days that we're there, and I barely had a bite. I think I had a bite of a samosa. That was it. I barely had any water. Each day it just kept getting worse and worse. And it was my fault. I should have went to the doctor or the hospital that much so quickly. After really like a day or two, I should have realized something was really off. But the stomach kept expanding harder and harder. And I had these waves of nausea that I'd feel during the day. And I really didn't sleep much at night. Not feeling nauseous the whole time, but just like it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I wasn't eating. And then on top of that, I was barely drinking any water, because whenever I drink water, my stomach would even become more distended. It was just like the hardest brick. It was so unpleasant. So I was losing a lot of weight. You could see my cheeks were becoming even a little sunken. It was just each day, it was like a Dante's descent into hell. I was just feeling worse and worse and worse and worse. But I just kept lying to myself. It's like a classic case. Oh, just a little bit of stomach problems here. I'll be all right. It'll pass. Because I really hadn't felt that super powerful nausea, and I hadn't puked. I felt a little nauseous, but nothing, not enough to vomit. So each day I kept getting worse and worse and worse, and I just kept acting like it wasn't happening. And I'd sit on the toilet, and I swear it looked like a Jackson Pollock painting. It was just, I started getting really like total liquid shooting diarrhea, barely eating anything, getting more and more dehydrated. Tried to get some coconut water for some electrolytes. That didn't work. And just shot it right out. Belching like you wouldn't believe, like the guy Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. Any of the fans out there? Am I dating myself? Just like absolutely these monstrous belches, and I was getting a lot thinner. So finally, the one night, I just remember saying to Kelly, it was about 11 o'clock, and I was getting really, really incredibly weak, just walking around in my underwear, basically. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's time to go to the hospital. And I could pick myself up, but I'm like, this is really, really bad. So I go to the hospital, 11:30 at night, walk into this back room, telling the doctor what the deal is, and I have my distended stomach in there, explaining it to him. He's like, oh, we'll just get you some Indian Pepto-Bismol. I actually sit and I start crying on the table. I'm like, listen, doctor, I'm like, this is not, look at my stomach, feel how hard it is. I'm like, you have to know, this is something of a parasite. I don't know what the hell it was. He said, no, we'll get you that. It'll be okay. I just wanted to rush me out. And he had like 7 nurses around him, which was one of the weirdest things. They just kind of stare at me, and they're kind of giggling and, whatever. White guy with stomach problems in India, go figure. So I take the Pepto-Bismol. Kelly goes to get the prescription, gets it fulfilled. I take it. Halfway on the way back, I start feeling freaking horrible. Everything just accelerated when I took that. It wasn't settling my stomach. It was going to come back up. And I just remember bouncing on the tuk-tuk, in the tuk-tuk, I should say, bouncing the bumpiest ride. I start feeling really sick, like I'm going to puke. I get back, not an hour and a half later. It's like 3 in the morning. Didn't sleep at all. Started almost hallucinating. Not almost, I was hallucinating. And I run into the bathroom for the first time the whole 10 days. I puke up the Pepto-Bismol, any of the water I took, the Indian Pepto-Bismol, I should say. And I'm like, oh my God, I just felt so dry. And that was a situation where I walked back in bed, and it was one of those things where I said to myself, and I barely walked back in bed, more like a crawl, but I said to myself, I'm going to go to sleep, or try to go to sleep. And when I get up, if I do, it's going to be a situation where, and I was just really starting to hallucinate, but I'm going to have to go to the hospital if things don't even improve a little bit. So long and the short of it, I didn't fall asleep. About 2 hours later, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I just had lost everything. It was like a night-day switch. As shitty as I had felt, and it was really, really bad, everything just ultimately fell apart. Became so weak. I was dangerously dehydrated, as I said later to the doctor, or at the hospital when I went to the emergency room. But I just told Kelly, I'm like, we have to go now, and I just started crying. So at that point, I was so weak. Kelly and the gentleman we stayed with, who was the kindest individual, he picked me up with Kelly like a rag doll out of bed. I just became totally limp. I couldn't move myself around. It was just like instant weakness. I had nothing left. I mean, a little bit of water, some, I reckon, since I hadn't died, electrolytes, and I was just bone. I mean, we're talking like 20 pounds in 10 days. It was just really, really dangerous situation. So they carry me out to the tuk-tuk, and they bring me to the hospital. And just bouncing, and I was in and out. I was just in and out, like hallucinating, passing out, going back and forth. And then we got to the hospital, and just still feeling horrible. I just remember laying down on the floor. Laying down on the floor, people are online and just everybody's just looking at me, and I did not even not caring. So a little beyond, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes, they brought me to the emergency room. Right away, got me on fluids. I believe it was 2.5 or it was 3 full bags of electrolytes by the time I was done. But right away, took my pulse. The doctor said it was feeble. But as soon as I got those fluids, I started feeling a little better. But I wasn't fully out of the woods yet, because they really hadn't figured out. It was just like a broad spectrum thing deal when they gave me the antibiotics. So I was there for about 2.5 days. My stomach really hadn't improved a ton, but I felt so much better because I was dangerously dehydrated. That's really what did it. But I wasn't out of the woods yet, and I remember taking some of the pain medications just, to help things out, and I would puke after taking the pain medications, which was unpleasant. But you just got to do it. It was almost instant, too. I just remember hearing that. They're like, oh, you might get nauseous, you'll probably vomit. And I'm thinking, oh, I should be able to handle it okay. I do feel a little better. And I'm talking like 5 seconds after they hooked up the IV. It was just like automatic. So we leave the hospital. They let me go. I got my fluids up, but that wasn't it. I wasn't done. I still had that little bit of a basketball in my stomach, and it was off. So we took the bus, and I did feel a good deal better. The nausea had went away, like the blanket nausea. We took the bus to Covalent Beach. The guy we rented from turns out was a doctor, and we explained the situation to him. My appetite really wasn't back. I was just nibbling, and he said, oh, I really think you have Giardia. He said, it's maybe not the most ethical thing, but I really believe that you have that. And we explained all the symptoms, and a friend of mine who had it in Nepal the month earlier in Kathmandu, and he's like, that's it. She's like, you're going to take these antibiotics. They're 20 times stronger than what you take in the U.S. He said, you're going to feel sick as you did last week, but they'll work overnight. And sure enough, I took it. And this is after about, literally now we're talking a good 3 weeks after I initially got it. Took the antibiotics, absolutely fought so hard not to puke that whole night. I was heavy hallucinations. This stuff was hardcore, but I was on the toilet, trying to, a little bit of diarrhea, just like jet diarrhea. It was unbelievable, fighting down puking because I had a little bit in my system. But passed out on the toilet at like 5 in the morning, just crawled into bed eventually. And then when I woke up the next day, I wasn't back. But that was a turning point. And I remember it was probably the happiest I was in my life, because not only had I cheated death about a week before, but I was on the way to becoming better, eating a bite at a time. When I'd get my, roti at the place, I'd have like 1 or 2 bites of roti, and that would be it. 1 or 2 forkfuls. That was all I could eat at the time because my stomach had shrunk so much. But it was just slow and steady. A couple bites. I was eating maybe, 200, 300 calories a day. But at least I was eating something. So slowly but surely getting my strength up. It took me a good month from when I first got sick to where I was walking 20 feet and not being winded. So guys, that was a little recount of a quite wild experience, my wildest one, I should say. And I've had some crazy ones since I've been circling the globe. If you want to become a full-time blogger, you could purchase my ebook at bloggingfromparadise.com/ebook. Hopefully you don't suffer through Giardia in India, and that's what it was eventually. They figured out, not really technically figured out, but we pretty much pinpointed it. Of course, the dangerous dehydration was what really did it. So guys, until next time, you know what to do. Enjoy paradise all.